There's something about the beauty of outback Australia that captures the hearts and souls of not only the people who live there, but visitors to the region as well. Belinda Murphy is the Mayor of MacKinlay Shire. She came to the area 20 years ago with no intention of staying. Belinda, it's a long way from Julia Creek to Tasmania. How did you end up so far from home?
Well, I suppose, long story short, I was flying. I learnt to fly planes commercially in Tasmania. I left and I went around a few places, but ended up in Caloundra doing instrument rating and twin endorsements. And my dream was to go to the airlines. And it just happened one day. The chief pilot of Stanbroke came in for a licence renewal that I sat in on, as I was an instructor as well. And that afternoon he offered me a job flying a 6-seater on Strathmore Station and said, it's yours if you can be there in sort of like a week or so. And I remember thinking to myself, it's not ideal, it's not twins, but it's ours, and I'd always wanted to go outback. So I literally packed my bags in my car at Caloundra where I was staying and drove to the Gulf and started there. Gosh. And I think it was about 8 or 9 weeks later, I remember ringing my dad and saying, I've changed my plans. I now want to fly choppers because you can chase cows around from the air, and I don't want to go to the airlines anymore. I just fell in love with the place and the people and just the whole thing that is outback Queensland.
There was one person in particular that you fell in love with.
Yes,
and
there was.
Yes.
Yeah, so eventually, after a few years of flying for different cattle companies, etc., I met my now husband, Wayne. And the rest is history, I suppose. 2 children and a business in Julia Creek, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah. And Belinda, in 2005 you started actually working with MacKinlay Shire Council as part of their senior management team. So what led you from that point to decide to stand as for the position of Mayor?
Yeah, so that's probably another thing about outback Queensland. If you want to have a go at anything, you can. Yeah. So working for council was so far removed from what I'd ever done before, but I had the opportunity to, which was wonderful. When I had my first daughter, Maddie, I'd actually resigned from the operational side of council and was working from home. And the previous mayor, who'd been there for 2 terms, stood down, and it was just one of those organic things. People started ringing, going, you should do this. And I love the community out there, and I thought I had a lot to offer from the operational knowledge that I had. The political side was a big learning curve. But I love the local government sphere. You can make an absolute difference very quickly at a grassroots level, as long as you work and listen to your community. Yeah.
And Belinda, I know you've given a lot back to your community and no doubt have faced many challenges over that period of time, but none more so than what you're facing now. So could you just give me a quick overview of what's happened out there, like how long it rained for and...
So I suppose the thing about when it started, and I remember driving back from Longreach on Wednesday, it was towards the end of January, from an Outback Tourism Board meeting, and it had started raining, and it's that feeling, and I live in town, but it's that feeling that everyone that would have had after 6 years of drought is this could be the break that we all need. Things were getting quite desperate again around our area. We'd had storms the last couple of years, but they were still isolated. So I did get home that night, and the rain continued Thursday through Friday, and by the weekend I think pretty much everyone was elated. A lot of people were away at boarding school dropping children off and probably thinking to themselves, this is wonderful, we're actually going to be able to stay away this year and have a bit of a break and everything's going to be okay. It's hard to describe how quickly that changed, pretty much from the Sunday through to the following Wednesday morning, when that rain had turned from absolute gold to everyone to absolute devastation. And then heading through towards the end of that week, the rain not letting up, the temperature drop and the wind that picked up for the latter part of that second week of rain, causing the exposure to a lot of cattle and further. I certainly remember that night because my husband and I didn't really sleep at all for various reasons. He was extremely worried about, the rain and what was happening, because we were both very aware that this was now turning from something wonderful to something very terrible. Certainly from my perspective, and especially my role for community, I just was thinking, my goodness, if this is happening in town, what is happening around our Shire overnight, and what are we going to wake up to? So, we didn't really sleep, as I now know a lot of people didn't really sleep that night. And waking up very early, I remember getting a text message from my CEO, I think it was about 5:30, 5:45, going, I think we're in a lot of trouble now. And I said, I think so too, I'm already getting dressed, I'll be in a minute. So it went from that to a blur of about 15, 16 days. And I think everyone was in the same boat in that respect out there.
Yeah. So what area is affected, Belinda? Like how many hectares?
Well, our Shire alone is 42,000 square kilometres, and although possibly up the top there's been a little bit of, in some of that forest country that's done okay, but still had losses and things, I would say our entire Shire was affected. As was Richmond, as was, half of Flinders-Shire and a significant amount of Cloncurry. Then the water's going into the Gulf. They're used to flooding up there, but they're not used to this. So they got significantly impacted, even though they could see it coming. There was nothing they could do. And I think that's the tragedy for everyone.
How many families have been affected?
Well, there's hundreds of families affected. Our Shire alone's got 185 individual properties, and whilst some families might own 1 or 2 properties or more, out of that there's probably only 14 company properties. So we're a large family farm business in MacKinlay Shire, as is Richmond and as is a lot of the northwest. So this is significant. Yeah.
And do you think there'll ever be an accurate number recorded of cattle or any stock that have been lost, cattle, sheep, horses?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be really difficult. I think they're not going to be able to really narrow it down till they muster. That's the bottom line. I mean, people out there, and I challenge any CEO across Australia to know their staff of a couple of thousand, as well as our producers know their cattle. So they generally have an idea of how many they've lost, but until they muster, it's not going to be completely accurate. Plus, we still have cattle at this point, 25 days on, that are dying. They're sick, pneumonia, 3-day skin infections. So unfortunately, it's not over yet.
Yeah. And Belinda, you wrote a story recently for the Queensland Country Life, and you began with these words: "A heavy heart and a strong sense of hope consumed me today." So tell me what you meant by that.
Well, it was really funny because that was the day I actually flew in an army helicopter with the Mayor of Cloncurry to Richmond Shire for the mayors to meet together and discuss a bit of an overall community plan and what on earth we were going to do. And so it was flying back, and I love flying, and it was flying back that I'm sort of looking out, and you could see all the green shoots start. This was a week after the rain had gone, and it was that mixed emotion of how wonderful the landscape was already starting to look. But knowing what I'd seen on the ground was underneath all of that. Was very difficult. Like, it was hard to reconcile.
I loved reading that story because in the face of such disaster, there was these beautiful words written with so much hope and positivity for the future. And the old saying, in every cloud there's a silver lining. What are some of the positive things that you have seen already come out of this?
Look, I suppose from within our own community, just the way everyone jumped in, as I said in that story, and certainly from a council perspective, we're quite, we're controlled by an act and a legislation, everyone knows their place. But I tell you what, pretty much through all of that was thrown out the door. Everyone treated everyone with respect, but our sport and rec officer was in charge of fodder drops. You know, our director of community services is helping organise fuel. Everyone was doing everything. People in town jumped in Toyotas, throwing fuel and hay on the back, going as far as they could. Yeah. The chopper pilots, they were at the cold face of what was happening for so many days. Yeah. Just looking back on it, you know, and I look back on what everyone is going through, and I know we'll have a future. Yeah. I know that people will get through this, and I know that because of the way everyone is handling it and working together right now and picking each other up, and you know, it is not going to be easy, but you know, we will get there.
The worst of times brings out the best in people, doesn't it? Thank you, Belinda, so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching our video. I hope you enjoyed it, and please try to remember to just click on the subscribe button so we can keep you updated with everything that's happening. Thank you.